Hello everyone and welcome to the Hobby Guard. Today we will be talking about the war for the soul of Warhammer and why it will be the last bastion to fall in the culture war. And don't get me wrong, it will fall, if it hasn't fallen yet. As an IP, as a company, I suppose. But this is not a doomer video. This is not technically a culture war video because I hate the culture war. Much like any other war, usually a very small amount of people at the top are profiting from it on both quote-unquote sides, if it's not the same side, like in the Clone Wars, the same faction controlling both sides, that's what I meant. And just everyone else is way worse off for it. Nothing good comes out of the culture war. That being said, I do think that Warhammer and many other hobbies that and IPs that I've been passionate about just growing up were a goldmine of cultural value, of our collective unconscious psyche channeling itself, all our collective archetypes channeling themselves through great pieces of literary work, sometimes horrible pieces of literary work, but still very fun, because Warhammer literally has everything that I like in media on it. It has action, it has horror, it has comedy, and actually the comedy is way funnier because it's accentuated by all the action, all the horror. It has stoicism, heroicism. It has... we'll get more into that because Northern Exile talks more about it in his video. But I will be reacting mainly through this long video. It'll be a long video, sorry about that. But this is an important topic to me. I will be reacting to two content creators. First one here is, I got his video on screen here, is Arbitrary. The other one is Northern Exile. We'll get to his video later. And both of them, sorry about that, both of them address the culture war in very different ways. And I think one does it the wrong way and the other one does it the right way. And just a big disclaimer, I really enjoy both of these channels, okay? I have a lot of respect for both of them. Arbitrary Ian, I think he has what's the word? A dedication to how he makes his video. They're well edited, well scripted, well read, I guess, well interpreted. The music's great. It's just there's a lot of quality to his channel, and I really enjoy his channel, him, and his book reviews with, what's her name, Mira? I don't know. I really like their book club book reviews as well. So just a disclaimer, I am biased here, as well as Northern Exile, but we'll talk more about him later. That being said, I was watching this video that YouTube showed to me as if it was new, I guess, but it came out a year ago for some reason, about Primaris Marines. Why people hate the Primaris Marines, or something like that. The issue with the Primaris Marines. And I will drop the link to both videos down in the description below, because I really want people to go and see them for themselves, make up their own minds, support whichever content creator they like, because it's very hard to become a content creator, especially like producing things as if, producing quality things. I mean, I should know I don't produce a lot of quality just now, but producing quality things pretty much for free at first is very hard thing to do. So yeah, go support whichever content creator you like. That being said, this video was originally talking about why people don't like Primaris Marines, and he was making arguments about why some of the hate that they get is actually silly or has just been farmed for rage bait and clickbait and so on, right? I was actually enjoying this video a lot. He was making great points. But then the video turns into this, and I'll show you and I'll comment.
This. Okay, non-Warhammer section. If I was like Philosophy Tube or something, there would have been a title card there, and I'd now be in a latex catsuit in a spaceship. So just imagine that. The polarization of opinion in everything is a well-documented feature of modern online conversation for a load of reasons. But its effect on nerd properties and the rise of the idea of fandom is kind of interesting. In the real world, the level of connection afforded by the internet over the last couple of decades has allowed groups of people to find each other and build communities much more easily. And a lot of the social progress we've seen has been the result of people, particularly people in various minorities, realizing that they're not alone, being able to talk to other people like them, and then to put their hands up and say, hey, we've been here all the time, but only now have we realized there are loads of us, and these are the struggles we as a community face. This is known by the sometimes disparaging term of identity politics.
Okay, so I'll just make a quick stop right there. I don't disagree with what he said just there. Just came out of the blue, but he did give a fair warning. Hey, this is non-Warhammer related for a second here. Okay, fair enough. I would argue Warhammer, just as it was actually already a great place for people of different beliefs, cultures, orientations, ideologies, whatever, to just come together and collectively be horrible people. Well, roleplay as horrible people, depending on whichever faction they can choose, because every faction is full of objectively horrible people. And we could all just have been horrible people together and have fun and throw dice. But anyways, let's keep watching.
There's then a load of pushback from more conservative people who don't want to have to change their worldview to accommodate for the fact that these people exist.
I don't know if I already mentioned this, but I do have this video sped up because I do talk a lot and I don't want this video to be 3 hours long.
And hence the bin fire of the internet. Identity politics is falling out of use as a term, particularly because it's been so overused in criticism. But I'm going to use it here because the idea of identity is really important to how fandoms work. Because that same system also works for stuff that isn't important. The level...
Hear that. He said, let me just replay that real quick because I totally forgot exactly the word he used.
Fandoms work. Because that same system also works for stuff that isn't important.
Okay, that system of identity politics works for stuff that isn't important. His own words. What he means by that, I don't want to be facetious and just take out of context what he's saying here. I think what he means is there's minorities that are targeted and they find community via the internet, and that's very important for them because they are targeted, right? That's one thing. By the way, it's completely legal in every Western country, modern Western country, to target minorities, right? So, and I agree with that. No minority should be targeted just for what they are, what they like, what they believe, how they were born, like any of those things, right? So yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Also, it's very illegal to do so. Even in my third world country, it is very, where I come from, it is very illegal to do so, right? So okay, that's one thing, right? But then he says, then it's also for things that aren't important. What he means is hobbyists aren't being prosecuted, but they're acting as if they're being prosecuted. And I'll comment on that later, because he does make a lot of good points. That's the issue with this type of argument. He's making, on the surface, what look like good points.
The level of connection afforded by the internet allows groups of like-minded hobbyists to find each other and build communities around their favourite thing.
Nothing wrong with
easily,
that.
And this means people are much more likely to go deep into something they like, maybe even to start to identify as that thing. The language of identity politics, absolutely valid when we're talking about a persecuted minority, sexualities, ethnicities, or disabilities, is then pulled over into all sorts of other things too.
Okay, I'll stop him right there again. No minorities with any sexualities, disabilities, or whatever else he said are being prosecuted in any Western countries where Warhammer is mainly bought, sold, and played. If there is a place in the world where minorities are being targeted and prosecuted, and I would argue Warhammer would be a safe space for them, even, if anything. I still don't see, like, how all of that is he's not making an argument yet for how that is relevant to this, other than to compare how hobbyists react. The other thing I want to say here is, I would argue that hobbyists, in many cases, are being... well, I'll get into that later.
things that are choices. You're not just someone who rides a bike to work. You're a cyclist, part of the cycling community. You don't just go jogging. You're a runner. It's part of who you are. And you're not just someone who likes Star Wars. You're a Star Wars fan, part of the Star Wars fandom. It's part of your identity, part of your sense of self. And that's a problem, because this isn't really a movement you're an equal part of.
That's a problem right there. Why is that a problem? I'm sorry, but if there can be... Hold on. Let me ask something real quick to Gemini over here. I'm going way off script for this, by the way. I don't actually have a script, obviously. But let's just ask Gemini something real quick. Hey Gemini, how many genders are there under the LGBT community?
The understanding of gender in the LGBTQ plus community is quite diverse and not limited to a specific number. Gender is often seen as a spectrum, including people who identify as transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, and many other identities beyond the traditional binary of male and female. Does that make sense?
Yes, is there an estimate for how many are colloquially accepted to exist? Is it more than 10, less than 10?
There isn't a commonly agreed number, as the way people identify is deeply personal and diverse. The focus is more on respecting individual identities.
There you go. So the focus is more on... focus is more on respecting individual identities, right? So, I'm sorry, in most countries, I have a friend from Nigeria, for example. Awesome guy. In his country of origin, Nigeria, what did Gemini say just now? Non-gender specific people are not persecuted. Because they've never heard of not gender specific people. Okay, it's just a thing particular to Western countries. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. What may happen, because they don't even have that concept. Just like they don't have ADHD in Nigeria. Oh, they probably do. That's unfair. But in some other countries, less developed in the science of psychology, for example, they won't have so many cases of autism or ADHD because they haven't even heard about some of those things. It's more rare that those countries exist nowadays, but they still exist. My point is, if people can grab an identity that is as subjective as that, and that's their right, I'm not here to deny that right, why can't people grab as their identity, hey, I'm a Jedi? That's not my identity, by the way, but why is that less valuable? Well, because you can choose to be a Jedi. This is Ian's argument here. Oh, you can choose to be a Jedi. Well, you can choose to be a hobbyist. These people cannot choose to be non-gender specific. Well, I guess that's an argument.
It's a product owned by a company who sold it to you, and you just like it. You have no control over what they do with it.
I absolutely agree with what he's saying right here.
Your sense of identity by being a Star Wars fan, then the company who own it just changing it can feel like an attack on you. Suddenly, the IP being changed is a threat, and the language of genuine identity politics is co-opted. So fans are being persecuted by a change, or by their inability to access their hobby whenever they want. And since this whole process...
See, this is why this is so hard, because he makes a great point of how rage baity the Warhammer community can be and how victim mentality we can be sometimes. Like, oh, we're being persecuted just because we like Firstborn Marines more than Primaries. Like, no, that's just a company that has to make money. And they gotta make new models and they gotta sell them. And you know what? They do look better. I'm sorry. I don't think the design is better in regards to the aesthetic, but the models look a lot better. I have Firstborn Marines and I have Primaries Marines, and I can tell you right now which ones look better. That being said, I don't think, and there's something huge that he's leaving aside here, but I'll get into that later. That being said, he's still completely disregarding that you can grow attached to that as your identity. He used, for example, a protest with people with a cardboard that said Black Lives Matter, right? When he was talking about identity politics. Well, Black Lives Matter is a movement. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the founders, or one of the founders, or some of the founders of that movement have been accused of stealing a bunch of money and fraud, basically. That didn't stop all the people that follow that movement, that gave money to that movement, that didn't stop them to identify themselves with that movement. Sorry. And you can say, well, yeah, but that movement stood against racism, allegedly, and racism is way worse than, as a concept, is way worse than, I don't know, the war against masculine characters in media. I would argue that is right, but that is not the argument that is being made here. The argument is this cannot be your identity because you're not being persecuted by it. Well, none of these other people are being persecuted either. People might like or dislike, but they're not being persecuted in general. That being said, how many of us do we not remember being bullied, and where I was from, beaten almost to death sometimes, just for being nerdy, weird kids? Were some of us autistic? Hell yeah. Very neurodivergent? Hell yeah. Did we choose any of that? No. But we were also the weird kids who were, back in the day, for example me, way too much into Star Wars. Not anymore, because they destroyed it, because girls needed to like Star Wars too, I guess. And the end product is that almost no one likes Star Wars anymore, but who am I to talk about, who am I to judge? But yeah, I recall being very persecuted by the normies back in the day for that. It just so happens that now that all that stuff is mainstream now. I think that's great. Alright, let's carry on.
Success is so tied up in ego and how people construct their sense of self-identity, it's then really easy to fall into the same conversations as real-life identity politics. The Star Wars fan group is being attacked by the feminists group. The Warhammer fan group is being attacked by the woke lobby, etc., etc. Even if they're very different things, the language and the way we talk about those identity groups are very similar. This is all stuff that's been going on for ages across all sorts of different nerd properties, a move from fans thinking of properties as a thing they like to thinking of them as a core part of who they are. And it's encouraged a bit by the fact that we nerds have always tended to see ourselves as a bit of a persecuted group anyway. But Warhammer has a couple of characteristics that make this even worse. First,
I agree
Warhammer
with what
can
he
be
said.
a particularly all-consuming hobby. It's easy to spend a lot of your time on
He's
Warhammer.
dropping a lot of facts
Try
right
starting a
here.
YouTube channel.
But
As
yet,
well as playing this
I
game, which
believe that
frequently
he's
takes up an entire
completely
week of
disregarding the
time,
fact,
a Warhammer
which
fan
is the
will
argument
spend
that
their
I'm
spare time
making.
painting for
He's
hours and hours a
completely
week
disregarding
while
the
listening to
fact
Warhammer
that
audiobooks or idiots
for a lot of
or
people,
reading novels
Warhammer
and constructing lists in
and
their
just
spare
this
time.
type of hobbies in
Workshops
general
sort of encourage this.
is a
One of the
huge
selling
part of
points
their
the
identity.
Warhammer hobby is that it includes so many different
And
things connected
he's saying like, oh, these people, doesn't matter because you're not being prosecuted for your identity. Well, I don't think anyone wakes up every day, like, you're not being prosecuted for something that you can don't change or whatever. I don't think anyone wakes up and they're like, hey, we have to start a movement to find every single non-gender specific person that we can, and we have to burn the asexuals in the pyre. Like, that's not really a thing that happens in Western countries. So again, just putting things into perspective, because he's using this as a, hey, we are persecuted communities, we have the right for identity politics, and he's leaving aside this whole huge issue, which is, why do only you have the right? Is it because you're a victim? Okay, why are you a victim? Why are you persecuted? Well, my parents didn't agree with my decision, and my church pastor thought I was possessed because I like people of the same gender. Let's just use this as an example. Horrible. I think that's terrible. Also, the same church pastor would probably think that Warhammer is satanic. The same church pastor would probably, parents would probably think that Warhammer is a waste of time, waste of money, and it's very diabolic. Like, anyone can claim that they're being prosecuted under those conditions if that's the bar for being prosecuted. So again, the fact that it's a company doesn't really matter all that much in regards to that.
The fact that Warhammer has actual factions. There's a tendency, especially amongst newer players, to feel like they have to pick a side and then support that side, almost cosplaying as their chosen models. Why don't my faction get enough lore, or enough wins in the lore, or enough new models? You're not just someone who likes a toy soldier game, you're an Eldar player, and you and your fellow Eldar players have been treated unfairly by Games Workshop. You're owed those new models, and Games Workshop's doing those Eldar players dirty by not updating your range as much as some of the other ones. Even for
He's got a point there as well. Like, people do react like that.
nerd fandoms, this is relatively rare. You don't really see D&D fans complaining that their chosen species have been done dirty.
He's wrong.
And as
You
the
absolutely
community
do.
of gnome players, we've been discriminated against by Wizards of the Coast, because in D&D you're encouraged to play a new species every time you start a new campaign. In Warhammer, the inherent quality that it's a game where you pick a faction and then play against the others encourages this sort of ideological cosplay, especially online, where you can hide behind a character and, well, pretend you're a purifying Black Templar if that's the sort of thing that appeals to you.
I'm sorry, is that shaming that I hear from Arbitrary Ian here? Like, do you see where I'm coming from? He's completely... I'm terrible at this, by the way, just like listening to something and talking right back at it. But, because I get too much into the video. And I have the hard time finding the right words, so I hope you bear with me, and I appreciate if you do. But what I'm trying to say is, he's completely strawmanning the opposite side. Like, oh yeah, you're just cosplaying as a Black Templar online because you're behind the screen.
The last issue with Warhammer is the one we're actually here for. The relationship between content creators, clickbait, and the existing persecution complex of the fans.
Okay, and then he proceeds to make a lot of good arguments, and a couple of ones that I don't agree with. So, anyway, I'll stop his video there, and I'll talk about it right now before we move into Northern Exile's video. I realize this is gonna take a while, so I apologize. But I'm very passionate about this, and if you're watching so far, you probably are as well. So, one argument, huge argument that he fails to make there is how Warhammer fans don't have the right to feel persecuted, and all that's going on, at least that's how it read to me, or how I perceived it. His argument is, well, you guys are just freaking out and feeling persecuted because the internet connected you, and you're just ripping a page from the book of actual prosecuted communities, although I've already said, like, I don't think many of them, at least in Western countries, are prosecuted or targeted. They might feel more vulnerable, but that's different. I would argue nerds feel very vulnerable. But anyways, he's saying that basically you have no right to feel persecuted for a company making decisions that companies are going to make based on profit and whatever. He's absolutely right. I absolutely agree with that, with what he said. The issue is companies don't make decisions only based on profit. The issue is when companies start to make decisions based on ideologies. And that's completely the issue that he's completely disregarding here. And he's just, again, using the Warhammer community, sure, as ragey and clickbaity as they can be, as we can be, I guess I should say. He's completely disregarding how many other community. I would have listened to this video and be like, oh yeah, absolutely, he's right. Everyone just calm down. No, I think what people are actually freaking out is that they get to see how everything else got destroyed. Let me show you something here real quick. I saved it specifically for this purpose. Well, I didn't save it, I should say, but I have it here handy. I used to love World of Warcraft, okay? I used to have the Blizzard in general. I bought a very expensive, when I was not in a financially stable position to do so, very bad decision, a very expensive book called The Art of Blizzard. And it had literally all of these old school drawings. And by Chris Metzen, I think his name is, the legendary artist of Blizzard, old school Blizzard. This is in 1995, Okay, I was born in 1994, just so you get an idea. This is almost as old as that, okay? See how freaking heckin' metal that is? See how manly that is? See how brutal, how violent, how dark, even if cartoonish it is? It's fucking fun. Oh, damn it, I tried not to curse. It's too late now, anyways. It's freaking fun, okay? It's hella fun. A very particular type of person is gonna be attracted to that. Maybe an edgy kid. Maybe an outlier in his school. He has to like fantasy. He has to like archetypes of masculinity, because that's not even a human. I'm not thinking, oh, he likes men. No, that's not even a human. That's an orc. It's a creature that represents just the pure barbarity of a being just made for violence. And sure, they have other sides as well. But that is cool. That is what attracted people in the first place to the orc. I actually have my own orc over here. Give me a sec. I'll just so y'all know, I'm no tourist or whatever. Come here, orc. Hold on. Just give me a sec here, alright? Gotta put on my costume. Hey. Check out my orc. In my last D&D campaign, his name was Attila. No, Aquila, sorry. Pretty cool, huh? I realize you can't probably see it all too well. But anyways, I freaking love orcs. They're heckin' cool. Well, I love the 1995 Warcraft orcs. I used to play amongst many other characters. I used to have an orc in World of Warcraft because I was crazy about that game back in the day. And just Warcraft in general, and just Blizzard in general. StarCraft, I used to love StarCraft so much. The Lost Vikings, I even played the Lost Vikings. And now look at Warcraft 2023. With the same kid that was attracted to Warcraft in 1995. The same weird, out in the fringes, sitting out in the corner of the classroom kid that would like flip through this art book or whatever it was back in the day. I don't know where this was published back in the day, and be attracted to that and be like, hell yeah, that's cool. Would that same kid look at this image of Warcraft 2023 and be like, hell yeah, that's cool? No! Those are two different kids. And this is a very small example of what has happened to many hobbies in the past. Weird kids, men, women, whatever they are, non-gender specific bonanza, I wouldn't say they have the right, but they deserve to have fringy, weird looking stories that they're interested about. They deserve weird media. And whoever was attracted to this very specific type of media, like violent, masculine, kind of heavy metal, it's a whole vibe. You can probably tell that was me when I was a kid, but anyways. That kid, those kids, they still exist. Sorry. Kids still like manly stuff. Kids still like manly heroes, violent heroes. Nothing wrong with that. It's wrong with people acting on those things, but those kids will look at the Warcraft 2023, whatever this is, probably like a community update or something, and be like, ugh, dude, what the hell is that? First of all, look at that face. He looks like a Morlock. But I don't like to criticize artists because, well, their jobs are in danger anyways, and we just need to really support each other right now. But honestly, that looks even like it was made by AI. But no, apparently God does. Well, there's an artist name there, so it was made by a human. That's great. He has an amazing level of skill that I come nowhere close to. That being said, that is not appealing. That is not. Okay, what's this word that I'm looking for here? Target audience. These two drawings do not have the same target audience. And that's why people are panicking about Warhammer. Because we can tell, oh, we're no longer going to be the target audience. Guess what? We no longer are. Guess what? That is sad. Because that's what happened to Star Wars. and to many other companies, many other media, forms of media or IPs. Many other hobbies as well. Don't get me started on Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, yeah, get me started on Dungeons and Dragons. I'll be right back. Where is it? Where is it? Oh. I guess I don't have it at hand anymore, but I used to have my D&D Player's Handbook 2024. Don't get me started on the art on that, because it has some old art, and you can tell. And it's just very weird to do. Actually, where did I put it? It should be around here. I was using it not too long ago. Well, it doesn't matter, I guess. I was reading through that handbook when I got it, and it has a bunch of cool art. Some of it is old, some of it is new. But just the difference, because I look at the old art and I'm like, man, me as a kid, I would have been so hyped to play this game. And then I look at the new art and I'm like, I would never touch this game. Nothing wrong with it, nothing hateful. We're just different people with very different interests, and I grew up to be that way. And I know there's a fraction of the populace that think, oh, well, that's because you got taught toxic masculinity. Listen, I grew up with no men in my home. I grew up with 3 women, 2 older sisters, my mom, and my mom had me doing ballet and acting classes, and my sisters were actresses, and my mom was an actress, and eventually I became an actor. If you know anything about any of those things that I just said, it's not a very toxic masculinity focused. I was basically the theater kid, okay? And I was heavily into this violent, masculine, fucking cool stuff. Heavy metal, dude. Kids nowadays, I don't know if they'll have that. I wish they did. There's nothing wrong with us being like, hey, I really used to enjoy this when I was a kid. Can't we just, like, keep that soul the same? I'm not saying, oh, let's not bring people from a different community, like the whichever community. I'm not saying, oh, they cannot play. I'm just saying, can we keep the soul the same? And that is the argument that Arbitrary completely disregards. It's not the fact that people are just like, yeah, so he makes a good point, but it just seems a bit facetious from him to bring all this whole argument like, oh, yeah, ideologists, people with ideologies from persecuted communities have the right to feel persecuted, but hobbies don't. What he's completely disregarding is how over and over again those same people with those ideologies come into a company, start working at an IP with a very specific objective, mission, or purpose to change it to accommodate their own ideology and just ravage the soul. I mean, I hate going back to Star Wars, but it's just the clearest example here. That's my childhood hero right here. This is my childhood hero. Just, they turned this cool wimpy boy that learned that he just wanted to, I don't know, race sand speeders with his friends and shoot aliens, wamparats or whatever they were called. And he had a whole journey to become a heroic warrior monk who saved the galaxy with love, not with hate. He was a badass fighting, but he actually saved the galaxy by forgiving his father and trusting in that there was still good in him, and by not prolonging the cycle. That was beautiful. That was my example. As someone who grew up without a father, this was huge for me. And I would have loved that kids nowadays would still have, I mean, technically they can still go and watch the old movies. And I would have loved for more kids without parents to grow up with that example of like, hey, like my mom would literally play these movies to me. And when I would ask her, this is very personal, guys, but whatever. When I would ask her like, hey, mom, why is that not here? You know, she used examples from the movie. And I would ask, is he bad? Is he evil? She's like, no, he's just, you know, He was afraid. How brilliant was that from my mom? Because that taught me to forgive my dad as a kid. Okay? I'm not saying Star Wars was great because of that. It's just one of the many things that made it great. That's one thing that kids will never get from Star Wars again, because Luke Skywalker became this coward who hides on a rock in the middle of the galaxy, just lost somewhere, getting milk from some weird alien and just completely debasing his character. Obviously, the milk is a stupid example. But my point is, these things matter to people. These things are important. And the people who want to change them constantly tell us, oh, it's not important. Why are you fussing up? It's just some movie. Well, if it's not important to you, it's important to me. Why are you the one working there? Why are you the one making the decisions? Why are you... If it's not important to you, just go do your own thing, dude. Or do that. Or do them. Don't destroy what people already had. And this is where I go on to the other video by Northern Exile, which I have somewhere here. Just bear with me for a sec. Okay, it's right here. Hold on. Okay, I got it. Okay. So this other video by Northern Exile, which is another YouTube channel that I fully recommend. It's, to me, the right way to deal with the quote-unquote culture war. What he calls positive gatekeeping. Because don't get me wrong, and I want to make this absolutely clear. Right off at the start. 30 minutes in. 37 minutes in. Before we play his video. And in case I haven't been perfectly clear about this already. I don't like people politicizing my hobbies to the left or to the right or to the top or to the bottom. I don't care. Or the IPs that I like. I don't like it. I don't like people... I don't even like politics, man. So I'm not saying, oh, we should not let people of the LGBTQ plus community come into our hobby, or people of whatever religion or whatever race come into our hobby because they ruin everything. To me, that makes no sense, okay? Okay, I'll just give you an example really quickly. Before we play this video, which in my opinion explains it so much better. And he talks about positive gatekeeping, which is a term that I seldom hear. And I think it should become a lot more popular, okay? I have a lot of friends in the LGBTQ plus community. I have a lot of friends who are not part of that community, but they themselves are part of different minority groups. Some of us are immigrants, like I'm an immigrant. Some of us are, many of us are from different races. Some of us were actually prosecuted where we're from. And some of that stuff is no joke, okay? Like where I'm from, I have literal friends that have been, I don't even want to talk about that, but I have more than one friend that has been kidnapped and murdered, where I'm from, just because we live in a horrible situation in some areas. But my point is, I'm not saying we should keep those people out, okay? So what I was going to say is, I have this friend, and she's part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I try to get her and her partner into the hobby, because they show interest. And I only managed to get her, specifically. And she's legit one of my best friends, okay? She was one day looking at some pictures of how people paint their Space Marines or whatever. And she found a picture of people painting them as the LGBTQ plus flag. And she showed it to me and she said, oh, don't you think that's cool? And I looked at it and I said, yeah, that's cool. Like, the paint job is great. And she said, maybe I'll paint mine that way sometime. And I thought, well, in my head, I thought that makes no sense lore-wise. You would have to come up with a chapter that has that color. And if you do that, then yeah, it makes sense. It would remind me of like the Rainbow Warrior, something like that, which are a super cool chapter, but not quite. It has to be something very specific, and then you have to come up with a lore for their heraldry, right? Like, obviously, the Dark Angels, they were green to commemorate the forests of long lost Caliban. The Blood Angels, obviously, they were red because blood is such an important symbol in their obscure culture. Obviously, the Iron Warriors were that gunmetal gray because no one cares what they were. Their father doesn't love them, so he just put this on. I don't care, whatever. Perturabo doesn't care, so that's why they were gray. But that's what I was thinking. That yeah, you will have to come up with something for that to make sense. And that was it. That was the conversation. Oh, maybe I'll paint mine that way sometime. Sure. She ended up collecting another army. Doesn't matter. I didn't feel attacked. I didn't feel like my hobby was in danger. Someone bought those miniatures. They decide how to paint them. They chose that to paint them, which is could be considered an ideological statement. To me, that's a waste of miniatures because the lore is so much cooler. Something lore accurate would be so much cooler than whatever ideological thing you will be able to paint them as, in my opinion. But those are not my miniatures. I paint my miniatures the way I want. Let them paint their miniatures however they want, right? It would have been a very different conversation if she had been, are there any Space Marines members of the LGBT community? I would have said, yeah, absolutely all of them are asexual. No, but I mean more like, lesbian or gay or polyamorous or I don't know what else. I would have been like, no. And she's like, why not? Hypothetically, this never happened. And if she had been like, oh, there should totally be, I would have been like, excuse me, what? Yeah, I will boycott this hobby until there are Space Marines that they are members of the LGBTQ community. Are there female Space Marines? No. Well, there should be. Why? Because there should be. Oh, there's all these factions that you can have females in them, and some of them are composed specifically of females. Nope. No, I want female Space Marines. Well, that's a very different conversation. And that is exactly what has been happening to so many hobbies. It's not just that, oh, the feminists got into Star Wars or whatever. That I don't see a problem with that. Oh, if a feminist is writing Star Wars, I don't see a problem with that. Later in this video, Northern Exile talks about an author called Mike Brooks, I think. And I have an issue with Mike Brooks because, and he puts it better than me. I think he says he's a utopian. And he has utopian ideals, like progressive utopian ideals, and he puts those words into the mouths of the characters in the 41st millennium, like Lionel Johnson, and that's just a complete violation of lore accuracy in this world, right? So he makes that argument better than I could ever make it later on this video, and that's what I have an issue with. The issue is we are not. I don't like when people on the quote-unquote right politicize the hobbies. It just so happened that they're usually politicizing hobbies as a response to quote-unquote left people, left ideologists, already changing the hobbies from within. And that the other is just a response. Sometimes it's overblown. And honestly, I don't like either of those. I don't want some guy telling me like, oh yeah, Lionel Johnson is just like Trump. Yeah, so if you play Dark Angels, you should vote for Trump. I'd be like, what the heck? No, get the hell out of here, man. What are you talking about? If an author did that, that'd be way worse, right? And yeah, at the same time, people will throw usually left-leaning people. Again, I hate those terms because I don't think of my friends as, oh, you're right, or you're left. You're just my friend. You're a cool dude. You're a cool dude. I love y'all the same. Who cares? But anyways, left-leaning people will throw and have thrown for years started entire campaigns online to boycott things when they don't appeal to them. And it has happened over and over and over again, something that Arbitrary and conveniently disregarded in his video. And I mean conveniently in the actual sense of the word, because it just made no sense in his video to talk about that political left aspect of the hatred for Primaris Space Marines. Anyways, I'm getting confused with myself, so let's just let the expert take it from here, alright? I won't play the whole video, by the way. I have watched this before, just so I know more or less what he talks about, and I know more or less which parts to skip. But I will be skipping over a bunch of this video, because I want you to go and watch it and just make your own mind up about it, okay?
But in my opinion, it's very apt for what's going on right
Oh, I skipped over the important part, sorry.
and that I've put the work and effort into, let's put it that way. So this is the War for the Soul of Warhammer 40,000. It seems like a very grand title for such a video.
Again, this is also sped up, just so you know, just a little, just so I can get through it faster.
But in my opinion, it's very apt for what's going on right now. Full disclosure, for those of you who know, I am on the side of positive gatekeeping. Always have been, always will be. If you like Warhammer 40k for what it is, I welcome you here. I don't care where you're from, what kind of creed, background, colour you are, what orientation you have religiously or in your own personal life. I don't care.
He just
Like
says it's so
40K,
much better than I
welcome
just
you.
did.
Like 40k for what it is.
He said in like 10 seconds what it took me 5 minutes.
If you would like to change 40k to mould it into something else, then I suggest you find something else to do, because there are many things out there that would really catch your fancy, and I'd be happy to point you in that direction.
Yeah.
That's where I stand on this. So, there is a war going on, though. It is not one for an ideology or one with armies, but for the soul of a fictional setting. That setting is Warhammer 40,000. This was once a setting filled to the brim with grim stories about war in the 41st millennium, where the clock is always stuck at a minute to midnight, and mankind rages against the dying of the light. It put heroism in stark contrast. With the advent of 8th edition, however, 40k encountered a seismic shift in its narrative. Namely, two things happened.
Okay, before he goes into this, the whole change of the narrative, give me a sec. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I've been drinking a lot of Mexican pop. Manzanita Sol, original de Mexico. So, I know I'm gross, I'm disgusting, but I'm planning to just go to the gym and get jacked like tomorrow, pretty much. So just for maximum contrast, I'm destroying my my innards for tonight. And also, I got this at a Mexican store, which is not easy to find here where I live, because I'm no longer in Mexico. But anyways, he said something very important, and he found a brilliant way. And I wish we as, I don't want to say we as content creators, because I technically am a content creator, but I'm obviously not where these two guys are. But we as fans or people who comment on this sort of thing, I think we should start to have this very much in mind. The way he described the soul of Warhammer. And let me just replay it. Let me slow the video down to its natural speed, because I'm just gonna ruin it if I just try to repeat it just like that.
The light. It put heroism armies, but for the soul of a fictional setting. That setting is Warhammer 40,000. This was once a setting filled to the brim with grim stories about war in the 41st millennium, where the clock is always stuck at a minute to midnight, and mankind rages against the dying of the light. It put heroism in stark contrast. With the advent of 8th edition, however...
I think that what he just said just there is a huge part, and I think that's the start of a good way to frame this argument. Let's just focus on what do we think the soul of this fictional universe is.
40k encountered a seismic shift in its narrative.
And sorry, we have to make that distinction, because, okay, maybe not that specific distinctions, because as he argues later on, the narrative progresses as it has, and it changes as it must. But we need to come to an understanding of what it is, and then we can decide, okay, who's just a grifter? Who's just here to politicize it, and who's here because they actually enjoy. They want to enrich this fictional universe, or they want to give it the most important thing we as humans have: our time.
Namely, two things happened, and I was actually there when this happened as well. This is why I think the timing of me working for the company sort of was very serendipitous to starting a YouTube channel, because being there at the time when 8th edition dropped, you could see the massive shift that it had to the zeitgeist, the people in the store. Anyway, the first of the things that happened in the setting to move things on was that Cadia actually fell. The world of Cadia had been the bastion against chaos and the Eye of Terror all of this time. It was a staple of the Imperium's might and tenacity in holding off the enemy. Its fall was a massive event, but also put into place several poor trends that have only really grown worse since. Namely, the fact that everyone kind of wins. It took years for the Guard to get their win out of Cadia, but now the rock that is Cadia is back and flying around, we can see that the true nature of Cadia's importance was the Necron pylons and nothing more. Even the Guard's greatest defeat turned into a kind of victory. Nobody is allowed to lose in 40k anymore.
And that's an issue, right? You can see how the actual soul of 40k is being attacked. How can it be grimdark if no one ever loses? Well, you can't make everyone happy, right? Let me jump forwards a bit here.
Amount of rending your garments, our fans, will change their direction of travel unless you do one thing.
Sorry, let me come back here, because I wanna address mainly the positive gatekeeping.
Loved the grimdark nature of 40k, but also saw the value in moving things forwards. We just wanted our cake and we wanted to eat it too. We wanted 40k to move forwards with the grimdark themes that had always been present within it since 3rd edition. Then the arguments came. On one side, you'd have people pointing out that 40k was absurdist and leftist at its conception, with large references to pop culture and Margaret Thatcher in the pages of the very first edition of Warhammer, 40k at least, Rogue Trader. They would say that 40k had changed once before to be more grimdark, so it can be changed again to be less grimdark. They actually had a point there. Things do always change. Railing against it is just exhausting and counterproductive, because things are always going to change. The setting is going where Games Workshop says it's going. No amount of rending your garments of fans will change their direction of travel.
We don't own Warhammer.
You stop buying the models. And let's be honest, you never will.
No.
For all your pissy arguments and complaints, you will never get your wallet. You will get your wallet out the second Games Workshop releases something you actually think looks kind of cool. Be honest. A lot of you out there will think this way. They'll think, no, this should never change, and Games Workshop should never change. Mate, they don't care how many petitions you sign. They don't care how many YouTube videos you release. They don't care how many times you email them or send them letters. They don't care. They don't.
Of course they don't. Okay. And honestly,
If you don't like one...
I have a story with this. Recently, when Games Workshop attacked and sued and gave us cease and desist or whatever to a 3D modeler and printer who was doing some compatible stuff like with Warhammer, but that also looked a lot like Warhammer. I always have an issue with that, where it's like, well, when it's clearly an IP violation, like, yeah, that's clearly Warhammer. Yeah, that's they used to call it unfair competition, right? Because he can produce his models cheaper and whatever, and yeah, whatever. But the issue with this is the argument he was making. I think his name is Gamak. The argument he was making is there's even models that have nothing to do with Warhammer that technically are compatible because they're the same size and they're sci-fi or fantasy or whatever. And Games Workshop was sending him a cease and desist letter for that. So, like, what? People can't just model and 3D print anything sci-fi or fantasy in that scale? What, do you own that size scale of those bases? Like, what is the deal with that? So I was like, that's enough. I'm not buying any more Games Workshop and exactly any more Warhammer, at least for a while until this gets resolved. And exactly that weekend, I was hanging out with a friend whom I've been trying to get into Warhammer for literal years at this point, and he chose that stupid weekend to be like, oh, actually, that's exactly how he speaks, by the way. Hey, actually, I want to play a kill team with you. So we went and we bought a kill team, and I forgot that I was supposed to be boycotting with my small wallet because I'm not rich. And I bought a kill team myself. I totally forgot. And I got home and I was like, oh, damn, I was supposed to. Oh, whatever. Screw those guys. I'll just send some money to Gamak. And so I did.
One single employee there, they may do something about that if they get a huge backlash. But the whole direction of travel of 40k, come on, son. That's not happening, right? No one cares. unless you stop buying their products. If you stop buying 40k because they're taking it in a direction you don't like, that's when they will start to listen to you. That's when they will start to realise something's up here and the direction of travel needs addressing and reversing almost. That is to say, nothing of the political side of these arguments. Those arguing for change often found themselves championing the cause of the left and even far left, demanding that people be allowed into 40k and to change it however they see fit. That 40k needed to change with the times to survive, certain authors of Black Library even saw fit to support this narrative, with writers like Mike Brooks and others injecting extremely progressive and utopian themes into their Warhammer 40k fiction.
That's what I said that he said earlier, right? About Mike Brooks, progressive and utopian.
This was
which, you see, I have a lot of problem, like when I read something and just something feels wrong, something vibes wrong. I get like the impression that the vibes are off in, let's say, this book, right? Like particularly the book of Lionel Johnson, Son of the Forest, whatever. I collect Dark Angels, right? So this is very important for me. That's my literal Primarch, coming back to the setting. And I read it, and there was a lot of stuff that I enjoyed on my first reading, but then as I let the book simmer in the back of my head, something just felt off. I was like, why do I feel like I didn't read Warhammer just now? Why does this feel different? It felt more like Brandon Sanderson, which is not a bad thing. If anything, let me just say he's one of my favorite fantasy writers. I love his books. Mike Brooks is nowhere near that level of literary genius as Brandon Sanderson. But it's just not Warhammer. Brandon Sanderson is great at writing Stormlight Archive, and Mistborn and all those fictional universes. He's the best at just putting together a million fictional universes and throw them out, publish them all at the same time, and they're all interconnected, and what the hell is going on? He's great at that. That is not Warhammer. I love his books for what they are. I don't want to change those books. There's no room for that in Warhammer.
Damaging to the brand because this is a book with the 40k branding on it. It's official, not a piece of fan fiction, even though it may read like one. 2020 also happened, and I do not mean the plague. I mean the BLM riots and the need for every corporation in the world to bow down to the movement at the time. One of the first videos on my channel to blow up was the Games Workshop Moral Police video, where I argued against Games Workshop getting involved in any sort of ideological dispute in the real world. You are there to sell me models and help me with my escapism.
I think I might have watched that video like way back in the day.
White statement,
maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
If they complained about it, were labelled racists. Even if most of the our complaints were, and I quote, I am a left-leaning person, but I don't want Games Workshop getting involved in this stuff or telling me how to behave in the real world, unquote.
Yeah.
That statement right there made you a far-right activist of some sort in the eyes of the rabid Reddit mobs.
And that's the thing, like, I don't know why Warhammer has this reputation of being like right-leaning, Like Warhammer fans have this reputation of being right-leaning. I don't think I don't see that as a case. Some of them are, for sure. I know many of them. I know many of them that are left-leaning and they just like it for what it is. Hell, I would argue if I was a political person, I would probably be a bit more left-leaning in regards to the media that I consume and the arts than right-leaning. I'm more right-leaning perhaps in my marriage, for example. Like I opened the door for my wife. I guess that I believe in gender roles in my marriage. If someone breaks into our apartment at night, I want to ask her like, hey, can you go and fight for me? So you can consider me right-leaning in that sense, right? And I think that men should learn to fight. So I learned to fight, and I used to be a fighter. And I tell all my friends, hey, you should learn to fight. So I guess that makes me right-leaning socially. But in the media that I consume, arts are liberal, usually speaking. Not usually speaking. That's a whole other kind of worms that I won't get into. I think what people mean when they say that, Warhammer is full of right-wing people or right-leaning people, is that Warhammer is a very, just for its nature, it has to be a conservative side of the brain leaning universe, right? And it's an exercise in. I'll go into this at some other point because there are studies that prove this. How temperamentally right-leaning people and left-leaning people have different temperaments, different personalities, different parts of their brain get activated, I should say, and both have great things and both have bad things, very bad things. Okay, I know that's why I'm not a political person. That's why I'll never be like, oh, that side is completely wrong, always, forever. Like, what? Why? But in Warhammer, it's an exercise, a hypothesis. What if everyone had to be a horrible person to someone else? What if everyone had to be... I don't want to say any more insults here, but let's just keep watching.
You had what I like to call the Legion of Gatekeepers. They came in many forms, and I actually think I resided in this group myself. Most of the gatekeepers were those who wanted to see 40k as it was, but moving forwards. We were more than welcoming to anyone who wished to head into the hobby, who actually liked Warhammer 40k for what it was, namely something that was grim, dark, and pretty awesome. If you thought 40k was cool, we were right there with you and willing to go along on the ride with you. The thing is, if you wanted 40k to change, or were perhaps getting into it and wishing it to conform to your likes and your desires, those people, we would ignore them or point them in the direction of a game or setting that would actually be right for them. Mainly Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. For me, that is what positive gatekeeping is. It's respectfully maintaining the standards of what you're into. Then, there is the other side of the coin though. Idiots who would use the behaviour of the other side as an excuse to be horrid human beings and to line their videos and arguments with thinly veiled hints at wishing to keep people from 40k because of the colour of their skin or sexual orientation. Those people existed, they had large audiences, and more often than not, those audiences would go on the attack, and quite frankly, they gave the rest of us in the movement a bit of a bad name.
See, that what he just said there, I don't know exactly what he's talking about, like, in specifics. I know exactly what he's talking about, because I've seen the grifters, okay? I can tell sometimes just by the title, but I just don't follow those videos, because I'm interested in the hobby, not the politicization of the hobby. And that goes for every single fictional universe that I like. I don't like the politicization of it. And, yeah, it's depressing, honestly.
In a similar way to Gamergate, which was a campaign against corruption in games, media, and the nepotism surrounding it, that movement was then taken over by the far right and far left as their little battleground. The far left actually fighting for the corporate machine in Gamergate. Please tell me how that works. Mental gymnastics are bound for those people.
Exactly.
By saying all Gamergate was a clown show of people hating women in games. Similarly, we had people on the right stating that wokeness was ruining the industry and that gaming was and always will be a male-centered hobby and people should just get used to that. Both sides,
which is not true either,
have kind of a point, but the original message of Gamergate had nothing to do with either argument. It was co-opted and corrupted by the extreme political leanings of the people infecting it over time.
See, those people that say that women can't be gamers, they don't get it, because they have not seen the amount of hours, focus, effort, energy, and attention my very successful wife, professionally successful wife, will put on putting together her constructing homes for her Sims in Sims 4, okay? If that's not a gamer, I don't know what it is. It's just she would not like to play Space Marine 2. And she does not spend the amount of hours that I spend on the character creator or character cosmetics in Space Marine 2 to make it like a cool twist on a lore-accurate successor, obscure successor chapter of the Dark Angels. Yeah, what if I make my Guardians of the Covenant like this? Wouldn't that be so cool? She doesn't get into that. I assume some women would. Just statistically speaking, there's gotta be a woman somewhere that would. I just don't know many.
I think the same thing has happened to Warhammer 40,000 discourse, unfortunately. The more I see of it online, the more the battle lines are drawn, the more you are over on this tribe over here, or you're on that tribe over there, and the actual argument of where is 40k going is lost in the noise. So why do things always need to change? I mean, do they? A similar thing is in danger of happening to Warhammer 40,000. In fact, I'd argue it already has.
Yeah,
the
I agree
really
with that.
Is this, and I quote, and I say this myself, 40k should remain grimdark and stay true to its heritage, unquote. And it really is that simple of an argument.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
You need to
literally it.
argue against or for that statement. That's it.
It can't be hope
This has
punk.
been
It
co-opted
can't
by
be
the frankly
progressive.
irritating bunch on both sides of the political aisle, though, as a crusade against wokeism and progressive politics on one side, and a rabid need to tear down another sanctuary for men because bad actors might be hiding somewhere within on the other side.
And that's another thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way on Arbitrary Ian's video. Again, all of the respect for that guy. I loved his videos. But he kept referring to, like, these fictional universes as, like, non-important. And see, again, once again, he just put into words something that I went on a whole tangent about the orcs and that lonely kid in the back of the classroom. But he just said it, like, very quickly, like, oh yeah, sanctuary for men. Yeah, why can't men have a sanctuary? I'm not saying don't let women in. Hey, listen, okay, the gym that I go to, it has salsa classes. I know that's not gonna be a male-centric, male-dominated class. I still like dancing. I still like salsa classes. So if I go there, I will expect to be amongst a lot of women. And I will expect it to be a girly class. I won't go in there and start just throwing crap at people and giving them crap for, hey, why aren't you like pushing and shoving each other? Where's the beer? Or I won't like start joking with the girls, making the same type of joke with the women there that I would make with a man that was in a more quote unquote manly class. But some of those things don't even apply really, because I used to be a Muay Thai fighter, right? I've mentioned that in the past. And there were female fighters that I would train with. There were a lot of female fighters in my gym. And they were very manly. Sometimes they were more manly than we were. So it's a weird argument to make, right? But I'm not saying manly as only tough, but like their behavior was very manly. So there can absolutely be women in a man-centric or a male sanctuary hobby. It's just if they change it, then it's no longer a male sanctuary.
So our argument isn't even our argument anymore. Each time a talking point like this comes up, it is the same tired voices on both sides, simply bitching and making the argument about pushing their own political agendas. The issue here is, does 40k need to change at all? Well, I would argue that it does. Of course it does. Things always change with the times. There is nothing wrong with that, and I don't think any lover of Grimdark expects 40k to remain as it always has been forever. To think that would frankly be delusional. Nothing stays the same forever. The soul can remain intact, though, even if the dreaded modern audience is allowed to partake in the product. The issue here is that there is a debate as to whether the modern audience even exists, and if it does, why does it keep not turning up and buying tickets for the things it's supposed to like? I would argue that instead of changing completely to fit new people, 40k should instead branch outwards into more mediums, in exactly the fashion that it is.
Yeah.
Television, animations, and other forms of gaming outside of Games Workshop and on the Warhammer Plus umbrella.
Yeah.
Exporting 40k just as it is, with all of its trimmings, is the way to invite new voices in, and when they do, and when they are here, they absolutely should give their take on the setting as it moves. Doing anything else is stagnation. Gatekeeping works by making sure those entrusted to add to the tapestry of 40k understand what 40k is. It is not the act of making sure no voices are ever added to the choir telling our stories. If Warhammer 40,000 is so dark, how did we ever find fun in it? Anybody ever asked that question? It's something that has held up a lot on these
I was recently talking about that, actually.
Let's do this, let's do that. Well,
Yeah.
there's a reason why it's fun. Now let me get into that.
And it's
So,
not too dark
where
either.
is the fun in a setting like this? Well, dear viewer, it's actually from a surprising place. It comes from role-playing. Even Tyranid mummies role-play the act of being the hive mind and having millions of little pets to send
Tyranid
into
mummies.
their enemies to devour them for them. That is the
So in case you're not in the joke on that, for whatever reason, women are very attracted to collecting Tyranids, and I didn't believe that until I experienced it myself. I bought my wife a Tyranid army, or small Tyranid force, because those are the ones that she liked. And I was like, hey, but you love Egyptian stuff. Wouldn't you like the Necrons or the Thousand Sons? And she's like, no, but I like Ugly Bug. I'm like, okay. I think I know why, but I can't say it.
Say nothing of the many, many 40k bros who see a Space Marine tearing the head off of a Tyranid and think, yeah, that's literally me. The whole reason we get into Warhammer 40,000 is because we want to rage against the dying of the light, or to let it all burn down, or just to eat it all. I think it's rather telling, though, that even those who wish the setting dead, Chaos, Tyranids and others, are really just players reveling in playing the villains. They don't want the setting to end or change, and are some of the most powerful proponents of the grimdark nature.
Yeah.
I mean, the setting would not be grimdark without them. They are
Yeah.
literally the cause of the grimdark. It's kind of like that. Chaos players, Tyranid players, people like that who are playing the big bads of the setting, they are the Joker in the Dark Knight, right? When the
We
Batman
need
says,
each other.
Why do you want me dead?
Yeah.
And Joker's like, I don't want to kill you. You complete me. You know?
Which is, by the way, the reason. I mean, this is completely unrelated to the video. I'm just throwing this out there because, oh, what the hell? It's already a long video. I bought, well, I have it over there, but I bought that kill team that has the Death Watch kill team and the Necrons, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just keep half and I'll sell the Necrons. Now I'm thinking maybe I should keep the Necrons, and I should give back to the community in the form of playing a Xenos race, because, you know, Xenos players and all those like factions opposing to the Space Marines, basically, even the Guard, I would argue, they're the unsung heroes of the
I
hobby.
love everything about you. Like, you're literally... I can't exist without you, right? Yeah. That's how Chaos players feel about Grimdark 40k. And Tyranids too.
Yeah.
This is where we find the fun. It is the imagining of you as the commander of these forces. You are telling a story away from the tabletop with every stroke of your brush, every word typed in your frankly embarrassing attempt at writing lore for your dudes, every dice rolled against an honourable opponent as you lose again that model you just finished painting as it explodes
yes.
after being body slammed by another Primarch.
Yeah.
What the hell are they doing here anyway? That is where the fun lies. In being you and seeing you in Warhammer 40,000. This is why I may take the piss. As I may take the piss, I will never have a go at Games Workshop, honestly, for expanding the nature of what they paint. It's good to see faces other than white males being depicted in their models. It's true.
Yeah, I totally
I
agree.
just wish they would respect the lore we love and the universe we built.
I would even argue I would love to have more female factions, like female-specific factions. I think there's not enough of them, actually, in Warhammer. Because there's, just with that concept, there's a lot of them. Okay, let me rephrase that. There are more, I don't want to say more, but there's like so many factions where even if it's not female specific, they're very female centric. Not so many, there's a few, okay? Like the Slaneshi faction, or the Tyranids, no, just kidding, or the Eldari, for example, right? They have almost a matriarchy, like they're very female centric, and I love that. I love those models, I love the lore. And I think when you have like female-centric factions, it just brings a whole new level of weirdness and like to the setting. I know that sounds off, right? But since through all of human history, human armies have been very male-specific, not of all species on Earth, but specifically humans. Like the combatants have been very male-centric, not exclusively, but just dominated by men. When you bring a force of Xenos or something else that's more dominated by females, that's just interesting. Like, okay, why are they so strong? That offers a lot of potential to for some crazy sci-fi explanations, right? It can be interesting. Just as the Mechanicus are these langy, sort of nerdy, sort of almost like corpse-looking guys. Like, how can they stand up to a space marine, an 8-foot tall genetic modified monster? Well, it's because he has all this crazy technology, right? And that's a narrative. It offers a chance for a narrative exploration. So yeah, I would love more females in Warhammer, more female representation, which is not a word that we need. What I wouldn't like is more female Space Marines, right? And I talked about this in a previous video. I love Blood Angels and Dark Angels because of their culture. And the Blood Angels, well, both of them, their culture, their kind of what they represent, the archetypes that they represent and whatever. And I am Mexican. I don't need the Blood Angels to be more Mexican for me to feel represented in them, because I already feel represented in them because I didn't like them because they were Mexican, okay? Same with the Dark Angels. That being said, if there was a faction that was perhaps more Hispanic with more Hispanic influence, I would love that. Perhaps if it's good, I would like it. I wouldn't just buy it just because it's Hispanic. Like, no, who cares about that? The White Scars, my third favorite chapter, or one of my favorite chapters. I absolutely love the White Scars, and they're all not in the Horus Heresy, but in 40k. They're all supposed to be from Chogoris, which is ethnically. They're not Mongolian. They're like Asian, but with very dark skin. Very interesting, right? I don't want. I guess that sounds Mexican the way I just described it, but I don't want a Hispanic-centric White Scars character. I don't need that. I already like them for what they are. I already feel represented because a tiny part of me would also like to grab a sword and have a massive armor, and as he's saying, as role-playing in my autistic brain, and just grab a massive bike and start throat singing and go, whoa, 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 just decapitating people on the battleground. Like, that sounds cool. I'm sorry I was that weird guy. Lucky for me, other weird guys made a whole entire fictional universe for people like me. I'm sorry they didn't make it for people like you. But that's why there's so many other things out there.
Whilst doing so, and make no mistake, we did build it. So where does this war actually end? Where does it all... What's it all about then, Tom? You know, what's going on? So, this is the end result here. Well, I think that people will only... Sorry, let me just rephrase that, because it's my own writing, and I'm too retarded to actually read it from. So, what is the end result here?
I've been trying so hard through this whole video not to say that word. Usually to call myself that. And then he just drops it like that. Respect.
Well, I think that will only be answered in time, but I do have a singular hope. That the reasonable people, the normal people, the people who like Warhammer 40,000, will win out in the end. Make no mistake, the right, as in that political nature of things, the right is not winning this battle, because one of their key opponents in the war they are waging is the company
Games
that owns
Workshop.
the setting itself.
Yeah.
The only thing the efforts of the right will end up doing is proving the point of those on the left as they grow more frustrated and, in being so, more virulent in their attacks on the company and those agents attempting to ruin 40k as it is. Make no mistake, I think a lot of us normies are unhappy that the side championing our cause is the 40k is alright as it is thanks, is the right and the conservatives, even if I consider myself a slight conservative in my own outlook. Some of those on our side really do bring down our argument.
Like, that's the thing, right? He considers himself a slight conservative. I don't even know what I am. I don't even care. And there's some liberals as well that just want to keep the soul of the hobby as it is. And that's all we ask for, really. Like, Northern Exile, I really enjoy his channel. I've written myself some... what are they called? Hobby nightmares that he reads out. I love listening to his hobby nightmares, and I've written a couple actually myself. But I don't talk to him or anything, right? I just like his content. I'm not like in agreement with him in any way. I'm just one of his viewers, and I enjoy his content. Sometimes I'll check it, and years ago I wrote a couple of hobby nightmares. True stories, by the way. I don't like everything that he writes. He has this whole series of videos that I usually don't watch. Maybe I watched the first couple of them, where he's like creating his own version of the lore in Warhammer, and I don't like them. I like that he makes them. I love that he makes them, because I think that's the answer to this. And he just hit the nail on the head right there. Games Workshop is already giving into this. It's a publicly traded company. It's left-leaning, like everything else is gonna be for now, and then the pendulum is gonna swing the other way, and everyone's gonna be horrified as well. I'm horrified just thinking about it, but that's just the way the world goes, right? I just think that we need to... I won't get into that whole topic because I think that's the answer to the quote-unquote culture war. But I don't like the victim mentality of these right-wingers being like, we are under attack, our hobbies are under attack. Yeah, so if you're so manly, go and make your own. And I think that's what we should do. And that's what Northern Exile, sorry, I don't know his name, but that's what Northern Exile is doing. He's making his own hobbies based on the things that he likes. And I think that's freaking cool, man. Props to him. There should be more of that. In fact, I'll go watch those videos that I don't like just to give him the watch time, and I'll drop a like because we should support each other. Sometimes the Warhammer drawings that I make are way more grimdark than the lore actually suggests. But I just picture it while I was reading the books or whatever, a bit more grimdark, a bit more gnarly, more gruesome. And I remember back in the day I would upload my drawings to Facebook or whatever just to, I don't know, to get people to see them, the community, I guess. And some people were like, that's not at all how it is described in the lore. And I would be like, oh yeah, well, that's because the person who wrote the lore didn't make this drawing. I made the drawing and I like it more grimdark that way, so deal with it, right? And other people were just like, hey, I actually like this version better. For example, I drew Dante with wings one time. Some people liked it more. I liked it more. That's why I put on those wings. And some people were like, Dante doesn't have wings. Well, that's like your opinion, dude. I think he does. Just kidding. What I'm trying to say is we should support each other just for creating more stuff that we like, just for the rest of us. And the fact that I don't like the Northern Exile verse, as it's called, I think, right now, doesn't mean that I won't in the future, that I won't appreciate it in the future. I've certainly come to appreciate things further down the line when I reach just a different point in my life, a different perspective in life. I've definitely come to appreciate things that I didn't used to before. We should support each other that way. I don't mean content creators. I mean just creators.
Some of their takes, and it is true, right? You know, I think that point needs expanding, right? You know, I think a lot of the guys who have the same opinion as me of, you know what, 40k is fine as it is, dudes. Please leave it alone. Expand it outwards. Invite more people in, but make sure they know what 40k is. Please respect the heritage of the game and the system and the setting.
Yeah.
Guys who have that argument, like I do, the only ones championing our cause are the guys on the right, in general, right? It's the YouTubers and
which is a shame. I wish
who are more.
I wish that wasn't the case. Honestly.
I'm yet to see a progressive-minded hobbyist come at me from the standpoint of I want 40k to stay exactly as it is. Maybe I didn't finish watching this video because I totally didn't remember that. But funny enough, you know, synchronicity right there. Funny how these things go. Arbitrary Ian actually agrees with you, Northern Exile, on that point. And I think I can confidently say he's a more left-leaning content creator for the hobby. But in one of his videos recently, hold on. Sorry about that. In one of his videos recently, he was talking about the Primarchs returning, and he said something that I really agree with. He said, I personally don't like Primarchs returning. I like them to be more a thing of the past, more mythology. And I thought to myself, well, that's crazy. That's totally what I think. You know, I didn't think, what does this lefty know about actual Warhammer? If you know, who cares? He has his opinion. I happen to agree with him, and his content is good. So there you go, Northern Exile. You have an ally. The issue is not all of us will agree on everything, but that's just life, bros and sisters. Sure you exist, and if you do, God bless you, man. I'm sure you exist. But in terms of the narrative and the loud voices in the community, I'm sure I'll have an email from people, oh, I'm progressive, and I think, all right, dude, that's you. But the voices out there that you hear online,
yeah,
okay,
I guess
most of the progressive ones are either sucking Games Workshop's balls,
yeah, I guess,
because they like the direction Games Workshop are going in, or they're just ignoring it completely, right? They don't care, they don't get involved.
True.
Because why would you get involved? You're getting what you want. So why would you want to change?
Yeah, no, I guess you're right. It's
a lot of people.
I guess
like myself,
Arbitrary and does not get
I'm
involved too much in that
I'm
stuff
not
either.
Far right. I'm not all the way right. I'm mostly conservative about a lot of things in my life. I'd say about 60-70% of things in my life I'm conservative about rather than liberal. I mean, just want to be left alone.
It's a healthy split.
But in terms of this argument, it does worry me that most of the people saying the same thing I'm thinking, they sort of, these are the extremist people who are on the right, who they start off with my argument, right?
Yeah.
40k should stay the same, please, you know? And the further you go down the iceberg,
Yeah.
the more extreme things get.
Yeah.
So at the very bottom, you're like, well, black shouldn't be here either.
But that's the thing. I feel like a lot of the people on the right, sort of over the past years, sort of have come to that point where like they started meeting the extremists where they were, whereas a lot of the people from the left just came in with a sledgehammer from the start, and then you have things like that community manager, or community creator, or community poster, whatever he was at Games Workshop, that publicly celebrated the political assassination, not political, the political murder of a right-wing personality, a human, for Emperor's sake, and he publicly celebrated that. This Games Workshop community, I don't know what he was, community writer, I don't know what they're called. So, like, yeah, I think that has the opposite effect in the fandom, where the fandom might start to associate one thing with the other and think like, well, if liberals, extremist liberals, you know, are destroying what I like, then extremist conservatives must have the answer for what I like. And no, the answer is that extremists, liberals, and conservatives create hellscapes no matter where they go. Why do I know this? Well, my family on my father's side escaped a fascist dictatorship, and that's how they ended up in Mexico, because they were refugees from a fascist dictator. And I've had right-wing, mind you, very right-wing fascist dictator. That's how I was born in Mexico, because my grandfather fled from a fascist, okay? And then I have so many friends so many friends that are refugees from communist utopias, and by utopias I mean hell. They just flee from their countries. All these friends I met because they're immigrants, and Venezuelans and Colombians and so on. My own country is becoming a lot more left-leaning, and it's becoming a lot worse as the years go by. So yeah, I know, sorry, no matter what you're trying to sell me, I know that both extremes lead to hell. So leave me out of that, thank you very much. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I want to roleplay as a sick, genetically mutated superhuman soldier that is defending his species and maybe sometimes likes to drink a little blood. You know, net positive to the galaxy, more likely than not. The point is, just leave our hobbies. I'm spitting all over the place. Just leave our hobbies alone. And you know what? I don't want this hobby to be only for men, but I want men to feel safe playing this hobby. And I want women to feel safe playing this hobby as well. And just like this channel, I don't want this to be a channel for like, oh, for dudes. This is a channel. Welcome to your to your male safe zone, where we do nothing but do manly things. Men. I don't want this to be that. I want women to be able to watch this channel, and non-gender, triple binary specific 3,000 people as well to watch this channel. I don't care. I want just this to be a safe space for hobbies, and just to keep everything else out. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there, because I don't want to show too much of this video from Northern Exile, because I really want people to go and watch his channel. And more importantly, I really want to pee. So I'm going to leave that there. Please go watch both channels. Go check out both channels. You're probably more likely than not already know both of them, because my channel is minute. That being said, my channel might be small, but I really wanted to make a joke just there, and I really held myself back just to appease the algorithm. I just have to laugh in my head. My channel might be small, but my subscribers are huge. So I really appreciate, already 20 people have joined this journey, and I really appreciate the faith that you have in me, that you have in this project. I realize this content is not up to YouTube standards, and I realize I'm very new at this, I'm very amateurish at this, and I don't have the time or the energy sometimes at the end of a tough, long work day to put into my videos, but I still seriously appreciate you hanging around. So please just leave me any feedback, as usual, good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to say in the comments down below. Drop a like, drop a subscribe if you're brave and you have faith. And go check out these two channels. I think both of them are awesome. And keep doing what you love. Ad Astra, and I'll see you on the next one.